The 12th season of American Horror Story, starring Kim Kardashian and Emma Roberts, is all about fertility. Thank you to everyone who reached out and has asked if I've watched the show and kind of what I think. I think the show gets a lot about fertility right, and of course they get some things wrong. And I am going through each episode of the show because there's so much content about fertility, and it's a great show, and it is fascinating to reflect on what they're doing right and what you can learn from it. In this video, we're going to go through episode 2, in which, stop, spoiler alert. If you do not want spoilers, you need to go watch the show and come back, because I am going to be talking about what happens, because so much happens with fertility and the pregnancy in this episode. Okay, in this video, it's episode 2. It's called Rockabye Baby. We learn a lot about Anna's early pregnancy and miscarriage risk, and we'll go through what the show gets right and wrong about these really important topics. I'm Dr. Lora Shahine. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm so glad you're here. I love educating. If you want to learn more, I have so many videos here on reproductive health and fertility, IVF, egg freezing, etc. You can also find more on my website, drlorashahine.com. You have links to the books that I've written on fertility and miscarriage. You have links to Instagram, TikTok, and my podcast, Baby or Bust. It's a weekly podcast that comes out with interviews with people in the field and in-depth discussion on certain topics. So I am so happy that you're here, and let's get back to talking about American Horror Story episode 2. In this video, we're going to review a little bit about the show and what happens in this episode. And then we're going to go over 4 main topics. Number 1, Anna's 2-week wait, that really tough time between a treatment or trying and knowing whether you're pregnant or not. Number 2, we're going to go through Anna's first ultrasound, what to expect. What do you see on that first ultrasound? How do you know everything's going to be okay? Topic number 3, early pregnancy and wanting to make it stick, wanting to do everything you can to make the pregnancy continue and to have that baby that you were working so hard towards. And topic number 4, we're going to go through Anna's miscarriage. We're going to talk about the signs that she had, the evaluation that she had in the emergency room, how you know whether it's a miscarriage or not. And most importantly, we're going to go over how the doctor and how Anna's husband helped support her through this really difficult time. So before we talk about the topics, a little bit about the show. American Horror Story is a wildly popular American anthology TV series created by Ryan Murphy and Brad Falchuk for the FX network. It was first aired in 2011, and each season runs like a little mini series. It has different characters, a different story, and incredible stars. Jessica Lange, Kathy Bates, and Lady Gaga have all starred in different seasons. This season is all about fertility. It stars Emma Roberts as a movie star who is trying to get pregnant with fertility treatments. She's going through egg retrievals, embryo transfers, and at the same time trying to balance her blossoming career. She has a hit movie, and she is in the running for an Oscar. She's supported by her husband, Matt Zucri, who you might know from Gilmore Girls or The Good Wife, and Dennis O'Hare, who is her creepy yet supportive fertility doctor, Dr. Andrew Hill, and then an incredible performance and role for Kim Kardashian as Anna's savvy and ruthless PR representative who will do anything to get Anna that Academy Award. Now, in episode 1, which we went over in a previous video, I highly recommend going to watch that if you haven't watched that yet. We go over Anna's egg retrieval and her embryo transfer and what the show got right and what they got wrong about these really important IVF procedures. And in episode 2, we see Anna going through the struggles of the 2-week wait, waiting to see if she's pregnant. We find out she is pregnant. We learn about early pregnancy, and then the show ends with her having a miscarriage. Although plot twist, if you've watched the whole show, there's a little bit more to it than that. But this is a packed episode all about early pregnancy and miscarriage, and we're going to go through each topic. Topic number 1, the 2-week wait. There's a scene early in the show where Anna calls her fertility doctor and is describing some symptoms, and she's just waiting to see if she's pregnant and wants to know if what she's feeling is a good sign or a bad sign. I actually really appreciate what the doctor says to her over the phone. He says, "I know you're wondering if these are signs of implantation, but we just have to wait and see." And I have these conversations with my own patients. This is the 2-week wait. It's the time between trying, whether it's trying at home without assistance or an intrauterine insemination or an embryo transfer, until you can do a pregnancy test and know if you're pregnant or not. And this time is excruciating. I have a great video here on how to survive the 2-week wait, kind of understanding, how stressful it is and sort of ways to cope and help you during that difficult time. And then, of course, people want to test as soon as possible. So I have another video here on just how early you can get a positive pregnancy test. I hope those videos are helpful. Topic number 2 is that first ultrasound. So most people that are getting pregnant outside of a fertility clinic, without assistance, they will go to their OB provider or midwife towards the end of the first trimester, usually after 10 weeks of pregnancy. And that's when they get their first ultrasound. But when someone gets pregnant with fertility treatment, we often offer earlier ultrasounds for a number of different reasons. But I typically see my patients at 6.5 weeks pregnant. And the reason that we chose that is that this is the first time in a pregnancy that you can see a little bit of a cardiac flicker. So in the show, you see Anna having this first ultrasound, and they do a really accurate description and show a picture of what a 6.5 week pregnancy should look like. And it's really important to know what to expect, because this is not later in the pregnancy where you can see fetal movement or little hands and feet. Like that's at the anatomy scan at like 18, 20 weeks. At 6.5 weeks pregnancy, the pregnancy is about the size of a grain of rice. And the pregnancy develops in really specific stages. So at about 5 weeks, you can see an empty gestational sac. At about 5.5 weeks, you can see a yolk sac within that gestational sac. This is supporting the early pregnancy. At about 6 weeks, you can see a fetal pole, a little grain of rice right next to the yolk sac. And again, that's within the gestational sac, which is within the uterus. And then at 6.5 weeks, that's when you can see that cardiac flicker within the fetal pole that is next to the yolk sac is within the gestational sac. So I know that's a lot to realize, but sometimes people get so frustrated. They're early along, they've had a positive pregnancy test, and they're just like, I want to know if everything is okay. And sometimes you come in early and we kind of see some development, but we got to wait a little bit. Sometimes you have to come back a week later. And if you see development, everything's okay. So I'm just trying to share with what to expect at that first ultrasound, that 6.5 week ultrasound. And the show did a great job of showing what to see and what to expect. Topic number 3, how do we make an early pregnancy stick? Now, the show really gets the anxiety of being early pregnant and wanting a baby so badly. I have been there. I have counseled many patients through it, and you can see Anna and her husband are really excited about being pregnant, but they're like, all right, doctor, tell me what to do. I'll take whatever supplement, I'll eat whatever, I'll do whatever it takes to make it stick. And I actually really appreciate most of what the doctor says back to Anna. He basically says, and I've heard myself say this, I wish there was a secret recipe, but there's no one thing that you can do to absolutely make a pregnancy continue. But in general, I recommend these things. Number 1, eat well. Number 2, stay healthy. Number 3, exercise moderately. And the only thing that I struggled with a little bit, but I get why they did that in the show, is he says, number 4, avoid any kind of stress. And it's very dramatic, and like the camera changes and like his voice changes. And this is a huge part of the show. I get it that Anna is stressed about her career and getting an Oscar, but also stressed about being early pregnant and wanting to be the mother that she's tried for so long. That tension is actually a really big theme of the show. And so the doctor saying avoid any kind of stress is just sort of like eating into what Anna's already worried about. And I absolutely appreciate that. And I do think that there is a mind-body connection. I think managing stress is really important in every aspect of life. But honestly, studies really do reassure us that stress does not cause a miscarriage. And I have a whole video here on stress and fertility. I really hope that video can help you if you are feeling worried about being stressed. I've got information there for you. Topic number 4, miscarriage risks and diagnosis. So the show gets a lot of this really intense subject right. In the show, Anna's worst fears are coming true. She starts having cramping, she starts having bleeding, and she goes to the hospital to figure out if everything is okay with the pregnancy. Her worst fear is that it's a miscarriage, but of course she really wants that reassurance that actually it's just bleeding and that really everything is okay in the pregnancy. And when you have early pregnancy and bleeding, cramping, the best way to figure out what's going on is to do a transvaginal ultrasound, because if you can still see that the pregnancy is inside the uterus, if you can still see a heartbeat, it can be very reassuring. There are times people have a lot of bleeding and cramps and they're they're convinced that they have passed the pregnancy, and they come and see me the next day. And honestly, everything is okay. And I know it's so stressful, but that's one way that we can figure it out. So in the show, we get introduced to a new character named Nurse Ivy, who's played by Cara Delevingne. And she comes in to do the ultrasound. She's very stern, and she's doing the ultrasound, and she's not telling Anna anything. Anna is just sitting there in that really vulnerable state, just saying, hey, is the baby okay? And Nurse Ivy is just stern and quiet and just doing the ultrasound and not telling the patient, Anna, anything. And I know that this can happen. So in medicine, a lot of times when you're having an ultrasound with an ultrasonographer, that person is really taught not to interpret the images that they're seeing to the patient. And so there are people that get an ultrasound, and this person is doing the ultrasound and they can't tell them what's happening. Nurse Ivy just finishes the ultrasound and she's like, I'm going to go get the doctor, and walks out of the room. Oh, it's just like heartbreaking, but that really can happen. Cut to the next scene, and Anna is interacting with the doctor. He is giving her the diagnosis and telling her what's going on. And this scene gets so much right. I want to watch it with you. She wakes up.
Ms. Alcott, how are you feeling?
I lost the baby.
Oh,
I'm so sorry. I know how painful this is.
Where were you?
I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I had my phone off and I was taking a nap.
Do you know why?
We don't. But I can tell you that most miscarriages are the result of an undetected abnormality. It's not your fault.
so I know this scene happens really fast, but they get so much right. The doctor says, I'm sorry. He says, why? The most common reason of miscarriage is something in the embryo. And number 3, he says, it's not your fault. These are the things that I tell patients every single day if I am diagnosing a miscarriage, and I teach other people like residents and medical students to really focus on. It is so devastating to find out that you are having a miscarriage from a highly desired pregnancy. And there's some really important things that the healthcare provider needs to get across. They care. They're sorry. They're empathetic. They realize that this is really tough. And then they tell you it's not your fault. You are not broken. Remember, Anna said that in episode 1, she felt broken. And that the most common reason for miscarriage is a chromosome imbalance or an irregularity or something wrong with the embryo, not with the person that's getting pregnant. We are such a big target for ourselves. We blame ourselves for anything that has to do with reproduction and it going wrong. And the fact that the doctor in this moment of grief gets those really important points right is so important. My book on miscarriage and recurrent pregnancy loss is titled Not Broken, an approachable guide to miscarriage and recurrent pregnancy loss. And this information is in there. I'm sorry, this is not your fault. And you got to understand why most miscarriages happen. So that is episode 2. So much happened. I can't wait to watch the rest of the season. Maybe you can watch it along with me. We've already learned so much, and it's only been the first 2 episodes. So what did we learn from episode 2? Number 1, we learned how tough the 2-week wait can be. Number 2, we learned what to expect with an early 6.5-week ultrasound. Number 3, we learned that it's really common to want to control the situation and to make the pregnancy stick. But there's only so much we can control. And number 4, we learned about miscarriage and how a compassionate healthcare provider can really help someone in this very, very tough situation. I hope you learned something today. I am really enjoying going through American Horror Story episode by episode and learning what they're sharing with us and reflecting on it. Like this video, comment with questions that you have, subscribe to my channel so you get my weekly video on fertility and reproductive health. Let me know if there's other storylines or other fertility in the media that you'd like me to react on. This has been really, really fun. I'll see you soon. And until then, wishing you love, luck, and pineapples.